Hello and welcome. Today I'll be taking a look at carcass balance and what the temporary closure of the eating out market means for the value of beef. In the supply chain for red meat, one of the most obvious impacts of the coronavirus has been on the eating out sector. AHDB's own eating out review of 2019 estimates that about 21% of beef was consumed in this market. But what does the closure of this channel mean for beef carcass values? Retail sales data shows that demand for all cuts of beef rose dramatically at the end of March, although it has since come down in April. The increase in demand during the initial period of panic buying was overwhelmingly for minced beef, and this in particular influenced subsequent shelf stocking decisions. Since then, although demand has fallen, mince has continued to hold an elevated share. Reports suggest that stocks of top cuts, popular in food service, have been building in processors' cold stores, going to the mincer or being heavily discounted. Ordinarily, each processor minces a slightly different proportion of the carcass according to its own customer's demand, but in general, under normal circumstances, around 43 to 45% of the carcass is used to produce mince. This is the largest volume of meat from the carcass, although it only contributes around £780 a head to the overall retail value of the carcass meat. At the other end of the scale, there is fillet, which although only 2% of the volume, makes up around £200 a head of the retail value. So what does it mean when demand for beef switches towards mince? Well, quite simply, it means that overall, more of each carcass needs to go into the mincer, leaving less beef to be sold as these higher value top cuts. For example, by looking at AHDB's supermarket red meat price series, the drop in value of, say, flat brisket when it goes from a braising steak price of nearly £10 a kilogram to a lean mince price of closer to £6 a kilogram is clear. This cut makes up around 3.5% of the carcass, and so mincing it reduces the overall retail value of the carcass by around 14 pence per kilogram. Mincing the silver side too, just over 6% of the carcass, would reduce the overall retail value by a further 9 pence a kilogram. This chart shows what the average retail price of mince would need to do to offset the lost revenue from higher end cuts. The more of the carcass is minced, the higher the price of that mince needs to be to maintain the value of the carcass. When mincing as much as 64%, for example, the average retail price of mince would need to rise by 65 pence per kilogram to offset the loss of higher cuts. If the whole carcass, steaks and all, were minced, the average retail price of mince would need to rise by more than £2 per kilogram to offset the value of the more expensive cuts. Realistically, it's uneconomic to include all the meat as mince for a prolonged period, although some processors are finding that they're having to do just that at the moment, in some cases losing money on every animal slaughtered. The key for industry is to find a balance, where consumer demand is satisfied at prices that mean the most valuable parts of the carcass are not lost to the mincer. With that in mind, to help redress the imbalance in the market at the moment, AHDB, in conjunction with QMS and HEC, is running the Make It Steak campaign. So please encourage and inspire others to enjoy delicious beefsteak. Join in our Make It Steak and Steak Night campaign.